In this QuoteSoft pipe training video, you are going to learn how to populate your template with custom specs. To do so, let's navigate from the main menu of the program to the Jobs tab. In the Jobs tab, we created the template in the blue Templates folder, and within that folder you should see the template you just created. Let's open the template by simply selecting the Specs tab. Within the Specs tab, you can verify which template you are in by looking at the gray bar here. Within the Specs tab, you will manage specs using the buttons along the left. Because we just created this template, your spec list will be empty. With no specs in the list, you only have two options available to you. You can create a new spec from scratch, or you can import an existing spec and edit. Please note, creating a new spec from scratch will be very time-consuming and tedious. It will always be much more efficient to import a spec that is similar to the system you need and edit. And so, in this exercise, you will be learning how to import specs from elsewhere in the program into your template, and you will learn how to edit the specs to reflect your materials. To import a spec, select the Import button. In this dialog box, you will find you can import specs from any other area of the program. From the main menu, you were previously shown our default global spec list. You can access the global spec list by selecting Home. Specs can also be imported from existing templates. To do so, select the template folder, and you can navigate the existing templates and review the specs available to you within them. To import your spec, simply work your way through this dialog box from left to right. For this example, we will use the blue Templates folder. Within that, we will select the plumbing template, and from the plumbing template, we will select the domestic water spec. Please remember, you are populating your custom template with your specs. To do so, you will always want to copy in an existing spec that is most similar to the system you would like to set up and edit. Once you have found a spec and selected it in the list, please select OK. You will now see within your custom template your imported spec. We will first customize the spec by editing its name and description. To do so, first select the spec in the list and select Edit Info. Because you are creating your own custom template and no assemblies are yet dependent upon this spec, you can rename the spec. The spec name can be changed to anything you wish it to be, keeping in mind you are limited to 8 characters. You can also edit the spec's description. Keep in mind that you may not be the only estimator using this spec from this template. When renaming the spec, give it a good description so that others understand and know what the spec consists of. It is suggested you follow this formula when describing your spec. First, define the type of material the pipe is to be. Follow that with the type of joint to be used, along with insulation, and lastly, the hanger type. It's always a good idea to keep names and descriptions short and sweet, so abbreviating is a must. And lastly, you can set a default on-screen takeoff color. This will save you a step while doing takeoff for different systems, and this will also help your takeoffs appear cleaner and each system will stand out from each other. To set a color, select the button and choose the color you would like the system to be highlighted in for on-screen. To save the changes you made in the Spec Edit Info dialog box, select OK. Remember, dependencies such as assemblies are based upon a spec, and changing the information will affect that. You will be prompted with the dialog box to update any assemblies based upon this spec. You will want to select Yes. Now that you have renamed your spec and given the spec a description so that you and other estimators can quickly see what the spec consists of, now we need to open the spec and edit the materials within. To do so, highlight the spec in the list and select Open. You will be first taught how to read the spec, and then we will move on to editing the spec. A spec should be read and edited from top to bottom so that nothing is missed. At the top of the spec list, you will see the sizes of materials that will be available while using the spec. Along the left, you will see the database items that have been added to the spec for pipe, fittings, valves, flanges, hangers, hanger spacing, insulation thicknesses, and specialty items. Below the sizes and to the right of each material description are cells. A grade cell is a selected cell indicating that you will use that material within the given size range. A white cell is an unselected cell stating that you do not want to use that material within that size range. A cell with a dot indicates that there is a database item available with cost and labor for that material and the given size. A cell without a dot indicates that there is no database item available with no cost and no labor values. Now that you understand how to read a spec, you will now be shown how to edit the spec to reflect your materials. You will use the buttons along the top of the dialog box to edit your spec. Remember, you will want to edit your spec from top to bottom so that nothing is missed. At the very top of the spec, you will see the size ranges available to you. We will start by editing these. To do so, you will use Manage Sizes. In the Size Manager dialog box, you will be able to move sizes available from the program into the spec and sizes from the spec out using the two buttons between the columns. For example, if 1/4 inch is the smallest material needed for the given spec, you will select 1/4 inch from the left column and use the button with the arrows pointing to the right to move that size into the spec. When you select OK, you will see that size now available. If you wish to remove a size from the spec, you will select the size and use the arrows pointing to the left. When you select OK, you will now see that size is no longer available within the spec. Groups of sizes can be moved in and out of specs. By left-clicking and dragging your cursor over a range of sizes, you can multi-select. It is suggested for the custom specs you are creating to manage the sizes down to just the sizes that you need available for the given specs material list. Now that your sizes have been edited to a manageable range, we will focus on editing this specs material list. Again, we will do this from top to bottom, starting with pipe. To edit the materials in a spec, it's as easy as highlighting the material description and selecting Edit, or you can double-click on the material description. Then in the dialog box, select the options from left to right, redefining your material list. You must select all the options from left to right before you can select OK. Continue working down through the material lists, making changes and edits to the materials to reflect the spec's given requirements. Remember, everything defined in the spec will be available during takeoff. If there is an option that you do not want available, it is suggested you remove the option from the spec. To do so, single-click the material description and use the Remove button above. And confirm deleting the material from the spec. This is okay to do, whereas the database item still exists and can be added back in. To add a new material to the spec, use the New button and select the family of the item you'd like to add. Navigate through the dialog box from left to right and select the material. You will now see your new material in the spec. but you will also have to select the sizes that you'd like to use the material for. Remember, a dotted cell indicates that there is a database item available with cost and labor values, so only select cells with dots in them. Once your specs, sizes, and materials have been properly defined, select the Close button in the upper right-hand corner. In the confirmation dialog box, you can cancel to continue editing the spec, select No to not save any changes, or select Yes to save your changes. Continue importing and editing specs to populate your custom template with the different systems that you need. Thank you for watching this training video on custom specs. Please continue to the next video to learn how to populate your template with custom assemblies.